Yeah, welcome everyone. I hope you can see the share screen. I just thought, no, not this one. Hang on. Yeah, so we are going to use Mentimeter, but we're hoping to introduce ourselves. So this slide, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, I'm Dr. Liliana Velkin. I'm a co-SIG convener with John and Gigi. And welcome to our event. I'll let Gigi and then John introduce themselves.
Yeah. Hello, so I'm Gigi. I'm now working in University of Southampton as the lecturer of community music and social justice. So as Liliana said, we work together in the social justice SIG as a co-convener. And over to you, John.
Afternoon, everybody. My name's John Parkin, and I'm one of the co-conveners of the Social Justice SIG. It's great to see so many people here, especially since it's such a beautifully sunny day in England. So that temptation hasn't been too overwhelming for everybody. And yeah.
Oh, yeah, so just to start off with, we thought this is our title of today, the session today. We are going to use the chat and we are going to also use the Mentimeter as well to just to like brainstorm and then have our thought being recorded, and hopefully we can then share the results to all of you after the session as well. So if it's possible, can you try and see whether you can scan the QR code and then get to this Mentimeter polling system? I'm going to pop the link into the chat as well. You can also join through the link. So it's going to be anonymous. It's like a Padlet, but I just like the layout. It's like my personal preference, so hopefully it will work for everyone as well. Maybe we can start with this sort of like brainstorming question. Yeah. And then we will offer to pass through the presenter and then to do the presentation. Yeah, so the question on the screen is what keyword come to mind when you think about impactful research? Wow, we've got lots of response coming. Policy. Yeah. It's always related to KEE for me, for my practice here. So it's like it seems all many people actually put change there, because if the word is bigger in Mentimeter, it means like many people actually agree. So change is definitely going to be a main thread. All right. Worthwhile undercovering, right? That's cool. Thank you so much for sending your responses. So we're going to introduce presenter Liliana. Sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, I was just going to go over the structure really briefly. So this is our agenda for today. We first hear from Betul, then Cara, then Rachel Shanks, Carla, and then our own John, co-convener. The plan for the day really is to, each speaker will have 5 minutes to speak, and there'll be 5 minutes for questions. Gigi will be kind of shouting up 1 minute left for people in case, just to make sure people are aware of the time, just to try to keep us on track. Then we have an open time for discussion, and then we'll do a little wrap up, okay? I think that's our welcome and introduction. Yeah, so we have 5 speakers, and each speaker will have 5 minutes to share and 5 minutes for questions. So I think we're ready to start. And it's Betul is up first.
Hi, everybody. I'm Betul Babayit, if you can see me. Thanks so much for being here. It's a great pleasure to be here for me. I'll be sharing my screen now. Just give me a minute. Can you see it now? Is it okay?
Yeah, you can see it. It looks great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. So I'm Dr. Betül Babayiğit. I'm a senior research fellow at the University of Nottingham. And today I will be talking about how my research on multicultural teacher training contributed to more inclusive, more equitable educational opportunities for culturally diverse and disadvantaged children, in addition to promoting teachers' agency and leadership in their practice. So I will be talking about two different research. The first one, as you can see here, comes from my PhD studies in Turkey, Eskişehir. It's a mixed methods research in a primary initial teacher education course in Turkey. And why did we do this study? Because Turkey is a country that has been dealing with immense and rapid immigration waves, especially for the last 10-15 years. Although it has been historically a very diverse country, harboring more than 20 different languages, two of which is spoken by at least 30% of the population, excluding Turkish. The fabric of the society has been further diversified by the recent immigration waves. And many studies have already pointed out that Turkish teachers usually are challenged and overwhelmed by the cultural diversity in their classrooms. And because they haven't been adequately prepared for this diversity at all. And on the other side of the medallion, there are non-mainstream students who suffer from a persistent achievement gap. And there are also non-academic problems like low motivation, stigmatization, bullying, low feeling of belongingness, and low well-being, etc. And to tackle these problems, I redesigned the Instructional Principles and Methods module in a primary ITE course, in line with the principles of multicultural education. And by doing so, I aim to equip teacher candidates with necessary skills, knowledge, and awareness about diversity and social justice issues in education. So after the redesign process, I implemented and evaluated the course both qualitatively and quantitatively. And this research, by the way, has been the first attempt in Turkish context that aimed to equip teacher candidates with the necessary skills required for a culturally inclusive classroom. And the findings of the study showed an increase in teacher candidates' multicultural teaching competencies and an increase in their universality, diversity orientation. In other words, perhaps, this course helped them to develop more positive attitudes towards diversity and enabled them to explore universal aspects of being a human underneath the visible cultural differences. And interestingly, this course or this module actually helped them improve their attitudes towards the profession, which was very unexpected for me. And also, especially the qualitative results of the study showed that the teacher candidates' lesson planning skills for culturally diverse primary classrooms have been improved after the implementation of this module. And although the results have been very positive, I'm not really sure whether these takeaways from the module have been translated into teachers' daily-based practices, unfortunately, because the data collection ended in 2020, and all the participants from that period are now working as teachers, but I had no chance to track them down.
1 minute, sorry.
Okay. However, the second study provided the chance for us to do such research. In this study, we got funding from TÜBİTAK, the Turkish equivalent of ESRC, and the findings of this research was similar to the findings of the study one. And in this study, we also found out that Taking part in such a professional development activity corroborated primary teachers' multicultural teaching competencies, and teachers turned into change agents and champions of inclusion and diversity in their classrooms. Especially these data comes and these findings come from a data that was collected after 18 months upon the completion of the program. And we also found out that teachers used to experience lots of anxiety, fear, and helplessness about teaching diverse students. And now their self-efficacy and self-confidence and job satisfaction have been improved. And also they reported that students' emotions and well-being have been improved too. So our focus is research to change in this session. So we have identified impact on teacher candidates, teachers, students, schools, and even parents, because some teachers told us that even the relationships between the parents have improved after their PD activities. But how much is our, or how big is our impact? I think it is quite hard to determine that, but it may be very small, especially considering the sample size. But how about the ripple effect? We believe that, I believe that the ripple effect of these studies can be further expanded by the new researchers, by future studies. And I also would like to emphasize the key factors underpinning the positive impact of these studies, because I believe that our success was due to a needs-based approach, because we focused all the curriculum development activities around teachers' needs and their real-life problems. And also we provided them with collaborative learning environments that allowed them to learn from each other and get together to find practical solutions to the problems that they have in common. And we also offered them practical solutions coupled with the theoretical knowledge. And I believe that these were the factors that helped our study to create impact. Thank you for listening. I hope I have been successful in sticking to the timeline.
No, that's great. Thank you so much, Betul. That was fascinating. Are there any questions from the group? It was really, really interesting and very really, inspiring.
Thank you so much.
Sure. Are there any questions right now for?
I have a question.
Yeah.
First,
have you thought about, you focus mostly, I mean, you said that this project focused mostly on primary aged students and teachers.
Yeah.
Teachers. Do you think that perhaps working with secondary school teachers, it could be a way to maybe make a more immediate impact, just because the students are older, so the students that they teaching would be older?
Carla, thank you for the great question. Yeah, you are right, because we had very long discussions about this issue, especially at the beginning of the research, because when we were trying to determine the sample. Yes, you're right, but then especially in secondary schools in Turkey, there has been this, I think it's cultural, there is a very important national exam at the end of the secondary education. And especially in the last 2 years of secondary education, all the students are preparing for this national examination. Some of them don't even go to school. And so it's a kind of, eyes on the prize process, especially in the last 2 years of secondary education. So it's quite dominated by the exam anxiety and exam preparations and things like that. So it would be very hard for us to find teachers who would really go into the classrooms, do the things that, that they learned in this curriculum project. So I think it's equally important to recruit teachers from secondary education, because I don't believe that any education level is more important than the other. and multicultural education is needed for all levels or all schools, as long as there are differences in the society, which there is always, basically. So I think maybe in the future I can focus on that and work with secondary teachers along with primary teachers, I think.
Sorry.
Diana?
Yeah, I'm sorry. There's two questions in the chat. Daniel says, what methods did you mix and how was the nature of mixing?
Hi, Daniel. Thank you for the great question. I use multi-phase mixed methods research, and in both studies, we both employed quasi-experimental design. So there was a pre and post test, and on top of it, we also collected qualitative data. In the first study, I collected qualitative data throughout the term. For example, I asked teacher candidates to write essays about what kind of a teacher they would like to be, what kind their perceptions of teaching, etc., etc. And I also wanted them to write the same essay at the end of the term. And throughout the term, they were required to design lesson plans for hypothetical classrooms. I also analyzed them, and I kept an open mind while doing that and tried to analyze them sort of longitudinally to capture change in their planning, etc. It was very hard to do, I must admit. In the second one, we also adopted a similar approach, but in this second study, we mostly collected qualitative data after the completion of the program through reflective journals and also interviews and document analysis, etc. I hope that my answer is satisfactory.
Yeah, it seemed very helpful. So John asked, it's really interesting, Betul, could the project be scaled up within the primary school sector, I guess maybe in Turkey? I'm not sure. John can clarify.
I think so. Yeah. That was our intention. This is why probably the Turkish ESRC funded us in the first place, because they wanted something, that could be generalized to the whole population or the whole society. I think it can be scaled up through the entire country, but of course, we would have to redesign it to translate it into another context, I think, because it was suited for the needs of the students who live here, who come from, who have a refugee background, who come from either Syria or the other Middle Eastern countries. Also, the cultural and linguistic diversity within the country without having an immigration history, etc. So it can be scaled, but we would have to tailor-made it again for other contexts.
Oh, that's super helpful. And then there's just some other nice positive comments. And then it says, I think it is crucial to do this work with young children. They are so often overlooked. From Lucy, thank you. And Daniel said thank you.
Yes, I completely agree.
Me too, yeah. Any more questions?
Thank you for all the great questions. I'm so sorry, Liliana, I cut you off.
No, I'm sorry. Great, thank you guys so much. And you very much, I think we're in good time. Gigi, what do you think? Yep. So we're moving on to our next person, which is Cara Baer from University of Plymouth.
Thank you. I'm just going to get my slides up. So Liliana, I'd really appreciate it if you can just give me a big yes once they've appeared, because we all know how difficult that can be. So I'm just going to pop them in. Oh, amazing. I'm just going to see if full screen works as well, and then get going.
Yeah, it's in perfect. Looks great.
Amazing. Thank you so much. So afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I'm here to talk about part of my PhD project, and it's a super small scale project, really talking about small scale impact and research for change, but something that I think is really important. So this project is, well, my title is about really reflect the power of inviting and working with adults with intellectual disabilities to provide them a space to ask questions for a change. And one of my researchers really highlighted that when we had a conversation after the project. So I'm going to be talking you through that today. Fabulous. So let's move through. I just put my abstract up here for anyone who wanted to quickly scan it. But what you'll see throughout are images of logos, rules, pictures that I've taken, but anything that's on paper is something that all of the people involved in the project designed themselves through their writing and their own initiatives. So just, yeah, any images throughout this project is a product of their work, and I've got permission to share that. So my PhD is a participatory project focusing on an inclusive sports community for adults with intellectual disabilities. And the main research aims are to understand a bit about what this inclusive community is, whether it is one, and particularly developing a participatory element, and then looking at what inclusive research looks like and how we can do inclusive research and what difference might this make. So drawing on NIND and many others, I've coined as a participatory project, but as we go through, you'll see that it's been sort of stages of a participatory project. But as an insider, I'm in a prime position to support change because I'm a member of the community as well as a researcher of it. And of course, that comes with many ethical tensions, but there's no time for that here in this 5-minute presentation. So always welcome to chat on the ethical conundrums if anyone is interested. Moving on. Just to quickly highlight, this was a multi-stage project, including participatory diagramming, which was a big mind mapping exercise, surveys that I gave to support workers, and interviews I did with some of the participants. And then stage 3, which I'm focusing on here, is the athlete-led focus groups. So the participants, the adults with intellectual disabilities, becoming researcher. And they were asked the opportunity to see what was important to them within their community and what they wanted to research about. So it was really much about building up the research, as people had never been involved in research before. So providing gentle and more informal introductions to research to then really hand over the opportunity for them to get involved, design some aspects of the research and conduct it and deliver the focus groups as well. So the research committee, here you can see writing some questions down that they wanted to focus on for the focus groups. But the researcher-led activities had already taken place, as I discussed earlier, and then I invited anyone from the group to become a researcher. We had weekly meetings to discuss aims and planning of questions for the focus groups, and it was all led by them. I kind of just sat and facilitated and guided where needed. They felt really strongly that they wanted to gather case studies from each other and with each other about people's experiences of the group, which was really exciting. And then they chose to deliver this in group settings, so ask volunteers and their fellow athletes about their experiences of inclusion and their experiences of the club and what difference it makes to them. But we know that this collective knowledge and lived experience produces practical and tangible results. So athletes as researchers designed logos, designed a framework, planned questions, interviewed their participants, and then did an interview with me after, so I could see how this experience has been for them. And you can see some of the sort of materials they produce, like the group rules that tells people to behave themselves and yeah, be kind to each other and help out. And here you can see one of our meetings down there. As well as the doing of the research, thank you, there was also the dissemination of the research, and they were really enthusiastic about delivering a presentation, and this was brought to me with no prompting, which was really exciting. So what I wanted to do is really say, what difference does this make? So from all of the above, many of these things were done without discussion or guidance. So the handing of group rules, the handing over of presentation materials, was all reflecting initiative and leadership, confidence and empowerment. By talking about and having a space to become researcher, athletes reflected on how important it was for them to ask the questions for a change. And this is breaking a cycle where research can be done on people rather than with people, and it has implications for policy and practice. So you can see from the UK government's National Disability Strategy launched in 2021 that this was labelled a consultation, but actually failed to deliver and was not in consultation with disabled people at all. So this has implications for policy, as well as the very individual implications on confidence, initiative, leadership, and yeah, breaking the cycle there too. So whilst it is a super whistle-stop tour, what's next? Participatory data analysis. My participants have actually really reflected that they don't want to do any analysis and they'd rather just do the doing, which has been an ethical conundrum. Luckily, as someone belonging to the community, I can continue this work moving forward, and the research committee will continue as I continue to write up my PhD and put that framework more formally and share that wider. But this is something that's going to be continuing throughout and beyond the PhD, which is really exciting. So I've got my references there, and hopefully I didn't go over too much, and I'll stop sharing.
Thank you so much, Cara. That is really fascinating. Wow, I loved that. I've done some participatory kind of action research before, and that just looks really impressive and amazing.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Does anyone have a question for Cara? Oh, we have some questions. Liz says, very interesting work, Cara. Was it difficult to get through the ethics approval?
Yes, it was a really complicated ethics approval process, mostly because it had many layers. And thank you, Liz, for the question, because I talk about ethics quite a lot, and it's a really important part of the work. It took me a long time to gain ethical approval, mostly because a lot of the later stages of the work were kind of unknown, and I was leaving it so open to the participant researchers to decide what it was that they wanted to explore. But ethics committees like a little more certainty than that. So I was grappling with that and my own morals, thinking, well, they are the experts, but understanding the kind of guidance I had to adhere to. So it just meant I had to provide a lot of additional documents explaining, yes, here, there, what I might do, what could happen. And that came in the form of scenario planning. So I offered the committee multiple options and said, if this happens, then I'll do this. And if this happens, then I'll do this. But you really have to be committed. And it did take a long time, almost a year from start to finish to gain approval.
Yeah.
But worthwhile for sure. It's really, you can see the kind of change it's making just within the individuals I'm working with. Thank you again, Liz.
Yeah, we have another question from Gigi. Thank you, Cara. It's such a beautiful project. Is it difficult to get through ethics approval? Oh, you already answered that, kind of. Sorry. Another question was it difficult to organize your participatory research members committee?
Yes, at times, definitely. And no, in other times. Some of the club is very participatory. They're very much reciprocal in the way that the club operates. So I think having that kind of agency to make decisions within that made it a bit more familiar. But in terms of the project, the kind of committee itself, someone could have all said no, they didn't want to, and I did have to consider that actually this might not be a participatory project at all because they might not want to do it, and that's absolutely fine. But what I made sure to do was to do the committee before the club started, because what I really didn't want to do was take away from the activities and the sports that they were doing whilst they were there. So sometimes they, instead of us doing the focus groups, they say, well, I want to play badminton today, Cara. And it's about honouring that and being willing and flexible and having a lot of patience and understanding that this work will get done. But sometimes people have other things that they'd rather do that evening, and I need to understand that that's okay, because not everyone's agenda is to get a PhD. So I hope that answers your question.
Sorry, that was Liz's question, and Gigi said the thing about ethics approval. Okay, I apologize, I got it mixed up. So
thank you, both of you.
Bethel asked, thank you for the great presentation. Have you encountered any challenges in this process as a researcher, especially considering that you've been working with people who do not have any prior research experience?
Yes. And you have already, to some extent, answered my question too. Thank you, Cara, but you can go on. Sorry.
Thank you, Bethel. No, it's a great question. And there's been lots of challenges, mostly through the ethical aspect of things. But as I was just touching on as well, in terms of people have different wants and needs, and I can't force any kind of project, and I wouldn't want to. So it's participatory work can be really uncertain. And that means that I have to be, really aware of that and moving through it. Also, one of the things that challenged me really deeply was that my participants didn't want to do any analysis. And lots of people say, if you're going to do participatory work, you should include them in the analysis stage as well. So, that was something that myself and my supervisors, who are here today, which is great to see them, but that we've been talking about a lot, because I can get myself in these muddles where I think, no, this is what should happen, but actually what should happen is what the participants and the athletes want, and that's what I'm trying to honour all the way throughout. So yeah, but definitely challenging at times, mostly through the formal stuff like the ethics. Once I got clear on that, it was just checking in that I was making sure that things were being followed, and the morality of the project, and that no one was uncomfortable or I wasn't taking them away from anything else that they'd rather be doing. So balancing that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I actually have one more question, but it's time already. Can I ask more? Maybe I will leave it to later then.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, John also had one question. Are we running out of time, or can I ask it?
Yeah, I mean, we run out of time, but yeah.
Okay, well, the last question was, hi, Cara, do you and the research committee have plans to disseminate the research together?
Thank you, John. So definitely within the club, and we plan to make leaflets, but beyond that, I don't have any concrete plans yet, but I think we've been in talks of maybe bringing them into the university, especially around the ethics aspect. I've been in conversation about that. So it'd be really exciting to move forward with that. But I think in the PhD process, I can really lose track sometimes of getting it done. And there's this finite deadline of kind of getting that done as well. And I'm trying to be boundaried, but I think it's really important that I can continue to disseminate with them and that they're very much part of that. So if anyone's got any tips or anywhere that really welcomes that kind of dissemination, I'd be really interested to hear it. But not beyond the club and maybe the university yet, but I definitely think this is something I could take to conferences or even events like this.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
I think we really appreciate that. It was wonderful. And so now we're up to Dr. Rachel Shanks, from policy brief to non-statutory national guidance.
Thanks. I'm just checking you can see my slides. Can you give me a shout?
Yes, we can see them.
Right. Sorry. Hi, everyone. Sorry that this is going to appear slowly, I think. The title, for some reason, yeah. So this is all about school uniform and also about luck. So a third year student suggested to me about helping undergraduates take part in academics research, not simply doing their fourth year honours research project on doing their own research, but actually being part of a research project with a member of staff. And I had to think about that, and I thought, well, I could teach some undergraduates how to use NVivo software and at the same time get them to research something with me. And it's a debate between me and my partner whether he had the idea or I did, but anyway, we came across the idea of a school uniform, because schools in Scotland have to have, publicly funded schools in Scotland have to have a school handbook on their website by December every year, December the 12th, I think it is. And part of that is school uniform policy or school clothing policy. And so it's publicly available information. So none of the ethical dilemmas that were just being mentioned. And I'm just trying to get to the next slide. There we go. And so these are the students that volunteered to spend a week with me, learn how to use NVivo, and at the same time go to a different local authority set of secondary schools, download their school uniform policy or their school clothing policy, and analyse it while they learnt how to use NVivo. So between us, I probably did about 40 schools as well. So between us, we analysed the school uniform or school clothing policy of every publicly funded secondary school in Scotland. So all 357 schools back in May 2019. Part of the luck was that who's going to devote a week of their time in May after their exams are over? Well, it's actually some of the very best students. So I was very lucky that I had a fantastic group of students who worked with me. I offered them the opportunity to carry on working with me, and 3 of them did that. And so far, we've published with 2 of the students have published some articles. And here's just the summary really of what the first analysis that we did together. So 96% of the secondary schools had a compulsory school uniform. Well, technically, legally, it's not compulsory, but a sort of heavily suggested compulsory school uniform. 90% had a school tie, 2/3 had a blazer, over half specifically mentioned that they banned jeans, a quarter banned hooded tops, hoodies, and as you can see, trainers were also banned, and 20% had an exclusive supplier. Now that bottom line, well, all of it actually just shows you how expensive school uniform can be, because if you can't wear jeans, you can't wear your hooded top, you can't wear your trainers, and you have to maybe get the school uniform from an exclusive supplier, it all makes it more expensive. What I did then with the information, I thought, well, maybe I should do a briefing about this and send it to politicians, to policymakers. And so this slide is just showing you that if you're outside Scotland, there's the UK Parliament. If you're in Wales, I'm sure there's guidance on the Senedd website. The same with the Assembly in Northern Ireland. But in Scotland, we have the Scottish Parliament information SPICE unit that can help, and also we have the Scottish Policy Research Engagement SPRE also give advice as well about what to write in a briefing. So 4 pages maximum, 2 pages very best, just so that it's all really clear. And so then what I did was I did a policy briefing. It was 4 pages. I emailed it to everyone I could think of that would be useful, to Scottish Government, to members of the Scottish Parliament, voluntary groups, trade unions, professional associations. And following that, I then had meetings with quite a few members of the Scottish Parliament. Again, another part of luck came in, that this was in November 2020 that I emailed all the politicians, and they were just about to write their manifestos for the Scottish Parliament elections in May 2021. And they were and they were very keen to get ideas about what to put in a manifesto. So what happened was that a commitment to have school uniform guidance was put in 3 of the national parties' manifestos, and 2 of those parties became the Scottish Government. And then this led on to school uniform guidance consultation in 2022. The responses were published, analysed, and the summary published last year. And then in August this year, there should be some guidance, which is going to include this graphic that I came up with colleagues that I've been working with in Education Scotland, Child Poverty Action Group, and Aberdeen for a Fairer World. And it's just all about how school uniform should be affordable, it should be sustainable, and I said it should be comfortable, but for the Scottish Government it has to be that it's about equality, diversity and inclusion. So that's just it, if people wanted the slides, but there's my email address. But if you search for me, you will on the University of Aberdeen, I've got a website with everything that I've written. So I've now done 3 briefings, co-edited a book, written several journal articles, and it's sort of led to other things as well. So I'm now advising the Department of Education in Northern Ireland, as well as being in touch with the Scottish Government about school uniform. So really it's all partly luck. Scotland had no guidance on school uniform. I saw that opportunity, emailed everybody, had lots of online meetings because it was during COVID, have had round tables in Holyrood a couple of times. So, sponsored by an MSP. So it's just, just to say to people, sometimes it's just luck, that somebody suggests something to you, and sort of everything seemed to line up perfectly for me. So I don't know if anyone's got any questions.
Thank you so much. It's fascinating stuff. Yeah, any questions in the chat, or anyone want to shout out a question?
I don't have a
Rachel.
question, but I do have a comment. That's impressive. A lot of time, I mean, a lot of times we talk about everything that we wish that we could do, but it never occurs for anybody. I've never heard of anybody to say, right, let me just start emailing people. That's impressive. Well done, you. That's great. Wonderful.
Well, I did have help. So, I mean, I contacted people at the University of Aberdeen, and the public affairs officer said, oh, well, you know, let's set up an Excel spreadsheet. And he suggested, you know, all the people for me to contact. I did the legwork though, you know, got all the email addresses and then emailed everyone, because obviously sometimes the committees change and I looked at not just the education committee, but also the social security committee, the child poverty group, just anyone who seemed to have an interest in this issue. Yeah. But I think politicians are interested, especially around the time that they're drawing up their manifesto. You know, so they are looking for new ideas. You know, so that's what this was, and it was just, as I said, it was partly luck that there wasn't a policy, there wasn't guidance in Scotland. There was in the rest of the UK and all the different countries, and it was in the run up to the election. Yeah. Wow.
So we have, yeah, it is really amazing. I teach students how to do policy briefs or to work on developing them, and it's just great that your research really went into like changing policy. It's just amazing. Talk about impactful. So Gigi says, that's amazing, Rachel, thanks for sharing. John says, would you have any tips on how to engage policymakers?
Yeah, so I think the key thing was, I mean, so now with I've recently just done another briefing that's just for Aberdeen City on their school handbooks and information on school clothing grant. And I've tried to keep that to 2 pages and email that out. And again, there's engagement and people want to talk to me about it. I just sent it out last week. So I think it's that thing. It's that thing of finding out what might they be interested in and how could you help them. So I think it is that thing of doing a bit of homework about what are the issues that are of importance to the politicians. So the briefing for Aberdeen City Council is very much focused on things that the Aberdeen City Council can change. You know, they can ask their schools to have information on clothing grant, to have their school uniform policy the same on their website as in their handbook, to have an up-to-date handbook so that they're in compliance with the law, not to have gendered language, you know, so all these things, to have links that are up to date, information that's up to date, you know, so it's just tailoring it, I guess, to what will be interest. But that's why at your university, if there's a public affairs officer, which I think most universities would have, you know, speaking to them, because obviously they engage with a lot of policymakers. But these other bodies, like the UK Parliament has the Knowledge Exchange Unit. It's really helpful. They have, you know, the briefing guidance, but they also have recorded sessions that you can watch and live sessions that you can be part of. And then the communications team at Aberdeen also help me, you know, if I'm doing press releases and things like that. And also look at other people's briefings and think, well, you know, is that clear? The politicians do like numbers. So I think that's what really helped my study, was that I've done all the secondary schools. So, you know, I had all 357. So it was a totally, you know, national study. And I had percentages, you know, so I think sometimes that does help. That, you know, they like to see a few statistics in there. Yeah,
absolutely. So Charlotte has a question. How easy is it to get a briefing paper to government? Do you think it would be the same in England? Awesome work.
Thanks, Charlotte. I think it is, because Mike Aylesbury, you know, in the UK Parliament, he put through a private members bill on school uniform and the cost of school uniform, and there was new legislation as a result of that because the government took up his private members bill. So I think it is that thing of not a scattergun approach, but, you know, emailing everyone in all the different committees and all the different working groups, and then maybe, you know, there'll be 1 or 2 people, this is their thing. So certainly in Scotland, you know, I also had a Conservative MSP was interested, and he lodged a parliamentary question, but it was in the Labour Party, the Scottish National Party and the Green Party manifestos in 2021. But so I had 4 parties that, you know, were engaged, so that helped. But I think it's just somehow through contact, you know, finding somebody, possibly even starting off with, you know, the local, maybe your local MP, and then, but also if it's about education, the education teams, you know. So I also had a meeting with not just the Labour education spokesperson in the Scottish Parliament, but actually his whole team came along. So some of his staff, as well as another MSP, because they were drafting their manifesto. So it might be that not just the people sitting on committees, it might be the if you can see on a political party website who's the person to contact, you know, to do it that way. Because I know still school uniform, and the Labour Party for the general election I think are considering having a maximum 3 branded items of school uniform in their manifesto for England. Yeah, it is a lot of emails, I have to admit. It's a lot of emails, but it's so much easier now than 5 years ago, because people are quite happy to have online meetings. I think this would have been much harder for me if I'd been doing it 10 years ago, because I would have probably had to go on the train an awful lot to Edinburgh.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, you really motivated some people. Charlotte says you really motivated me. Thanks so much, Rachel. Great to see research on school uniform, one of those daily realities of life in school that is generally not explored. Very impressive. I will search for this info of this. I have a student interested in this issue for her master's degree. And awesome work. And very inspirational. So lots of positive comments. Thank you so much. It's so fascinating. I mean, it makes me want to pick your brain about engaging with policymakers. So yeah, it's really helpful. Thank you. I guess we're on to our next speaker, just in the interest of being on time. It's Carla Briffett-Atkiss, Empowering and Impacting Higher Education Students, the Student Voice for Social Justice Pedagogical Method.
Yes, one moment. Let me see if I can. No, is that right? Yes. Is this correct? Can you see?
Not yet.
Not yet.
It's coming. Something's happening. We can see it now.
Is it happening?
Yeah, it's a little bit blurry. I'm not sure why. It might just be. Oh no, now it's coming into focus.
Okay. I'm not really sure how to make it bigger.
If you look at the bottom of your screen, do you see the bottom of your screen? There's like that percentage bar. It says 53%, and there's like a plus and a minus. I think if you go towards the plus, it will get bigger, but it might. Yeah, if you. That's a little too big, maybe, right? You can touch on the minus and it'll go down, but yeah.
It doesn't matter. I can always just move it across. It's okay. Okay. So my name is Carla Briffett-Atkiss, and I'm at Xi'an University, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the Student Voice for Social Justice Pedagogical Method, but more about the impact that we've tried to have implementing and refining and developing this pedagogical method. So SVSJ for short is based around recognition, representation, and redistribution of knowledge in university classrooms. And what we're trying to do is to create a universal pedagogical method that is socially just for all students across disciplines. And we do that by having student volunteers help to plan course pedagogical content in conjunction with the lecturer. So the lecturer will plan courses as per usual, keeping in mind, of course, a student-focused approach, but they will leave perhaps 2 to 3 classes either in the middle or at the end of the semester for student volunteers to also participate in teaching relevant knowledge. And this is done by looking at the course intended learning outcomes, and then designing a lesson to teach both the lecturer and their peers as well. So the collaboration is kind of twofold. The lecturer is collaborating with the students in actually creating the content for each course, and no two courses will be the same, or no two classes will be the same, because the point of the knowledge that students teach is that it is somehow representative of either themselves or their communities, or different epistemological knowledge from different cultures. So that's sort of one collaboration. The other collaboration is with colleagues in an effort to expand the amount of impact and the amount of students who are being exposed to a socially just pedagogical method in the university. So for this project, it was there were three of us at Xi'anjiaotang University. There were three professors at the Education University of Hong Kong. There was one professor in Poland and another one in Bangladesh, and in a Bangladeshi university as well. So in total, it ended up being 6 of us. So 6 of all of our classes were able to participate in creating pedagogical content, and we are not all in the same field. So it spans research classes to education, to philosophy, to psychology classes as well. Because of the collaboration with colleagues, we were actually able to plan and design a conference for students, both students who had participated and also students who had not participated, and also for colleagues who had participated and those who had not participated. This we are hoping, number one, I mean, I think that it's always more impactful, I think, when participants would go and tell sort of what they got from the project or how they felt about participating in their education in this way. And also it gives other colleagues some more ideas about what they can do in their classes as well. For the project itself, we had a mixed methods research design. So we conducted pre and post implementation surveys, and then we did interviews with students as well. We also have been trying to include students also in the analysis of data, because I think that this is really important, and it's sometimes overlooked in educational research when students are the objects being studied as opposed to actually having influence over the scholarly work that comes out of the research itself. So we have been doing that this semester in particular, or this sort of implementation in particular. Let us see how it goes. So this was the second sort of project. The first project was only in a Hong Kong context. So we have expanded it a little bit more to mainland China and Europe and Bangladesh. In the next implementation, we will expand it more into the Netherlands and Turkey, and also different provinces in mainland China as well. So we're hoping that we can create something that will empower students to take control over their own education, and also to share knowledge with their lecturers as well as peers about different types of knowledge that are relevant that may very well be overlooked if we're just going based on what the lecturer chooses to teach or not teach in their classes. So that is it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Carla.
How do I stop sharing? Oh, stop sharing.
Yes. Mm-hmm. It sounds like a really fascinating project and really, really important. Does anyone have any questions for Carla?
To be fair, I'm a little weary after going after Rachel because her impact is so much more, but that's okay. Slowly we will get there.
So John asked, are there differences in deliveries between countries?
Yes, a little bit. So this is an international comparative project. So at the end of the day, when you're doing any kind of comparison, you have to make sure that it is comparable, right? Your implementations are comparable. There were slight differences, mainly because of the type of classes that were being taught. So for example, one colleague was not teaching a sort of a normal lecture, it was a seminar. So for her, it had to be modified a little bit. Another colleague was not able to necessarily open up the few classes completely, because that colleague had defined topics that must be covered, which is a whole different conversation about professional autonomy of lecturers and professors in the university. So the students, so how she worked around this is the students were able to look at the defined topics that had to be covered, and they could choose which topics that they wanted to examine, and then look at different ways of knowledge and different types of teaching and learning that could be done with regard to predefined topics. Most of the time, though, it was pretty similar. And because most of us, except for those two situations, most had the professional autonomy to sort of design their courses as, you know, as we wanted.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. So Gigi asked, I wonder how senior management react to this project, especially in China.
Sorry, can I just the background of me asking these questions, because I'm currently working with the cohort lots of international students, mainly from China as well, and we try to talk about social justice and music education, and some of them, well, they're from different city, different province, and some of them, when we talk about social justice, it's just like a sensitive word that they do not want to even touch on it. So I was wondering how, because it means different thing, right? If you talk about social justice in different country. And so I was wondering whether, like, how senior management react to this project, and are there any like sort of barriers that you need to go through when you go through this project, or you actually didn't mention the term social justice when you deliver that? Yeah, so yeah, thank you.
So that's a very interesting question. So I actually, the project is funded. I got funding from the university. So you're right. I don't think that everyone necessarily understands social justice in the same way. This is true. But I think that when we talk about social justice in education, and particularly the emphasis on student voice, that it becomes less sensitive, I suppose. Because I mean, from my perspective now, one thing that I will say, when I got funding, the funding application had to be written in Chinese, and my Chinese is nothing. Okay, I mean, it's not nothing, but it's not. I can't do that. So a colleague translated it for me, and then I got another colleague to look it over, just to see, like, if it was, you know, if the terminology and stuff was okay. So to be honest, I cannot say for sure what what terms or what words were used in the actual funding application. But the second colleague who checked it said that it was
Is it only me?
I think we've lost Carla.
Yeah, I think a little bit.
Sorry, it's frozen.
Yeah. But we can always.
Yeah, I think it's frozen.
Yeah. I think we can continue the discussion when she.
Okay.
Is she back? Is she back? No. Yeah, we can continue that later as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So can I let you introduce John, and I'm just going to join from my phone.
Yeah, sure. All right.
Take it away, John.
Exactly. That's our introduction. John, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much. Just show my PowerPoint. Yeah, some great presentations, and yeah, onto the final furlong now. So, afternoon, everybody. My name's John, and I'm going to be talking about my EdD project, an element of it. So just a little bit about me. Before moving into higher education, I was a primary school teacher for 15 years. And then I decided to move into higher education and teach on a undergraduate primary education studies degree. And what I found was that there were very small numbers of men on courses, and they were more likely to drop out of the course. And I didn't really understand why. And I found it quite upsetting as well. So that kind of provided the motivation to start my EdD looking at it. So I'm going to be talking about part of my research where I brought together students of all genders after I did some semi-structured interviews to talk about what it's like being a man teaching, working, training in a primary school. So that's what I'm going to be talking to you about. So just a little bit of background. In England, 14% of primary school teachers are men. Men get advantages going into a caring profession. Instead of a glass ceiling, there's a glass escalator that will speed them up to promotions and other such things. But there's also some challenges. A lot of this, I think, comes from like the perception of primary school teaching not being a role for men, perceived low status, salary, and also men being seen as dangerous to young children. And these are barriers that put men off becoming primary school teachers. And also, once they start, because they're coming into a space, they're used to kind of being in a majority quite often in the outside world. Going into a primary school, people's perceptions of them inside and outside of a school can affect them. People might make sort of barbed comments or jokes, which has been described as identity bruising, and just feeling different being in that environment, which can be challenging. So a number of places have set up support groups for men to provide that support, to talk to them about those experiences. But when I spoke to my participants, they wanted to do something with students of all genders. They didn't want to be separated. That would sort of make them feel different and othered. So what I wanted to do was sort of bring together students of all genders to talk about gender and experiences of education. So, students together. As part of my teaching, I'd already been using something called Playmobil Pro, which is in the picture here. And what I found was when I used Playmobil, which I'm sure many of you recognize from your own childhoods, Playmobil was a great way of getting people to sort of build little representations of concepts as what sustainability, what sort of teacher do I want to be in the future? And then students would talk about it. And I thought this would be really good for my workshops talking about men in education and gender. So I used this, I brought together students of different genders on the primary education studies degree and got them to talk about experiences, to make representations of boys and girls, the advantages, disadvantages of being a man in a school, different role models, our teachers' role models. So it was a stimulus really to help people think about what they're going to talk about. So a series of workshops where we looked at that. People built a model, that concrete opportunity to build something really stimulated people to talk, I found, building on this concept of constructionism. And participants, once they made a model, would talk about it with their group and with the whole group if they felt willing to do so. So participants would make a representation of their experiences and then talk about it. It wasn't the actual model that was the important part, it was their reflection, it was their dialogue, which was really important, to share those experiences. So I'll just share an example. As I said, it's not about, you know, the quality of what's being produced, it's the actual discussion. And here, one participant, a male student, made this representation. Only 3 characters. This is him by himself, and these are 2 parents. And what he talked about was he was working in an early years setting as a part-time job. And parents said, I don't want that man going near my child. I don't want him changing my nappy. Why is that man working here? So understandably, he felt under a lot of pressure. He felt like he didn't belong. And he was quite a quiet person from when I'd sort of taught him before. And he then had this chance to talk about that experience and talk about that experience with peers of different genders. And what I found, having this opportunity to talk about gender, to talk about the experiences of men, was people could have that conversation. People might have been friends, I found, from the focus group evaluations afterwards, but they hadn't talked about this sort of thing. It was a taboo topic. So the impact, really, of this, the change that I've achieved, it is very small, but I've raised this opportunity in a group to start talking about challenges people of different genders face, so that people are more aware of it when they're going into a teaching workforce. So yeah, that was my 5 minutes.
Thank you, John. Thank you. I was like so moved by the, you know, when you say like why is this man changing my child's nappy? I have to be completely honest. I actually said that when I visit a nursery, when I see a male practitioner in the nursery, I did do that because I was one of that parent who's like saying, why? So it's very important to have that research, and using the Playmobil, like the Lego block, is actually helping them to articulate their thoughts, isn't it? It's like giving them
yeah. I think it's just giving people time, because I find if I give them time to use this sort of playful approach, they're thinking about what they want to represent, making it, what's my representation going to show? They can then talk about it. So that's kind of the benefits that I found using it.
Yeah, it's helping them to sort of like position themselves as well. So it's really helpful. Yeah. So yeah, we're over to the floor for questions as well. Are there any questions or comment for John before I get too excited and then I keep asking questions?
It's late in the day now, isn't it?
How many participants are there in your study at the moment? I think I missed
10
that. Did
participants.
You mention?
So yeah, I had 3 men, 3 students who identify as men, and 7 students who identify as female. But I kind of had all of the men completing the degree. So it sounds like it wasn't a lot, but that's how many there were.
Yeah. And do they position that what they see currently at their position, do they do like way forward? Like what do they want to be their position in the future? Do they do that sort of things? Sorry, am I
No, that's good. Yeah, I've done activities like that, but I suppose that's a way I could develop it, isn't it? By thinking about what's the change we want to have, kind of like equality
exactly.
and that representation.
Like way forward, what do they want to be like? And it's also expressing what they want as well. Yeah, we've got really positive comments coming through. So then Neil's saying that was really interesting. Thanks, John. And then Elizabeth was saying, John, this is brilliant. I'm so interested in this topic and was considering research in this area a couple of years ago because of the way we have noticed our male trainees are sometimes treated during placement. Yes.
Yeah, because I think it's within the confines of the university, it seems different, but it's going into school, sometimes there can be difficulties. And I wonder if this can be sort of, whether it's this research or somewhere else, it's sort of that piece of work externally as well, working with schools, working with mentors about treating everybody with respect and thinking about what we're doing and things. So thank you.
So this is definitely like having like an impact there because you are amplifying their voice. But if you can make a change, like what sort of changes you would like to make? Like have a dream, what would you do?
I think it's embedding what I've done and seeing if it works elsewhere in other courses too. And trying it that way. But it's also kind of, other things that I've done when I was talking to participants. There was one male student, and he said he was the only male in his group, but there was a male in another group, and he just wanted to sort of be able to interact with students of all different genders. So that's something that we've sort of factored in with groupings and making sure that we've got male lecturers teaching in the first year as well, because that was something else that male students identified as something that they wanted to see. So I could see, yes, this is something that males do.
Right, thank you. We've got one more question. We've got comment from Rachel, really interesting and very sensitive topic, because by raising it in schools, you are alerting people to their own pressures. You're very, very good. And then
definitely.
We've got Carrie's comment, really thankful for all these amazing project sharing. Just may I ask how this project measured and evidence the impact? Actually, this is really nice question leading to our Mentimeter discussion as well. So I'll just share screen so that we can. Yeah, so I think we've popped some questions sort of like moving into the Q&A session. So Carrie, your question is like right on the spot. So I think we can gather our thought together and try to, or anyone would like to unmute yourself and then just to talk about this question, we can do that, or we can do Mentimeter as well. John, what do you think?
Wow.
So we've got these three
People
questions
want to type
right
anything,
here.
can't they?
Yeah, they can type it in the chat as well, or we can go to this one. And if I copy this, so actually, how do we capture, like Carrie was saying, how do you measure your impact? I guess everybody do it a bit different in terms of like regarding on the nature of the project. So just feel free to jump in and maybe we can discuss, right? Or presenters, you're like more than welcome to discuss as well. John, do you do that? Like, how do you measure?
Typing.
Right.
People are going to be further along with this journey than I am. because of where they are with their research careers. But it's going to be, for me, I've looked at evaluations from like the focus groups and what people have said, and talking about, well, it made me think about this in a different way, or I was surprised somebody had said this. Doing that, and also I've looked at how many men have sort of carried on with their degree, and does this work influence that?
We've got a hand up. I can't see the name. Can you? Is it?
Yeah, Daniel.
Daniel, right. Sure. Daniel, do you want to share your thought? Thank you.
Yeah, I think impact for me would be what lasting change in terms of behavioral outcomes are we able to see on the consumers of our interventions. For example, if it's an educational intervention, what kind of lasting change in behavior? That would be an indicator of impact for me.
Yeah. Yes, Beatrice, yes.
Yeah, thank you. I can put something here, I think, because my research was already about teachers' professional development, about multicultural education, and I sort of built my research questions on the effectiveness of my intervention. So that was the research, chasing down that evidence showing the effectiveness of my intervention. So in the first study, for example, I was unable to track any long-term impact of my research. However, in the second one, I was able to track the participants down along the way. And at the 18th month after the completion of the program, I could interview them and ask them questions about how they carried on with their studies, how they've translated these new this new knowledge and skills into their daily-based classroom practices, etc. And I collected some evidence, but I must underline that the evidence that I have is qualitative and self-report. And this is purely based on their perception of their performance, right? So it is especially in this topic, when you talk about or when you work with teachers, it is really difficult to be there and observe their daily-based practices and, somehow measure the impact of our intervention studies. And it's also even more complicated if you were to assess the effectiveness of your intervention on teachers, assess its possibly a positive influence on student success, for example, because student success is or it tends to be affected by many factors pertaining to the students, pertaining to families, sociocultural factors, etc., etc. So it's really difficult to get some quantitative evidence about that, I think. So although it's self-report, at least I could gather some evidence, qualitative evidence from the teachers, but I'm not sure if we can collect data about the effectiveness of our interventions at all times when we do such research.
Yeah, it's like really difficult to capture this. I actually asked this question earlier on, and I was wondering, like, can maybe all of you, like, presenter can help me with this. Like, I wonder, did social media play a part here when we're talking about measure and evidence their impact? So, for example, Rachel's project, you definitely attract lots of like politicians' attention. So I was wondering whether like social media plays a part here, and does that help to create the ripple effect of the impact of your study as well, the project, sorry.
Shall I come in here?
Yeah.
I mean, I mean, I did find Twitter useful, but I have to admit I deleted my account when Elon Musk let Donald Trump back on the platform. I don't use I'm on Facebook for work just to follow school clothing banks and similar organizations. So I have a LinkedIn profile. I guess I use LinkedIn a little bit, but I don't think in terms of how much traction your posts or your Twitter feed get or whatever, I don't think that's something that really you can show me is impact. I mean, it's engagement, but it's not totally public engagement because it's engagement with a group of people who happen to be on the same platform as you. So I think newspapers, radio, TV, or if you've had a research article published and then you can pitch the idea of doing a piece in the conversation, I think that is, that's maybe more useful than having lots of people like and share your posts. I think it's hard to show that anything comes from that. I mean, obviously, if people send you direct messages to say how useful your research was that you'd linked, you'd highlighted on Twitter, and then somebody's gone and read it because it's open access, and then they've come back to you and said, oh, that was really useful, that can maybe help. But I think I certainly don't think spending lots of time on social media is a use. The cost benefit analysis of all the time that you spend on social media, I don't think it pays in dividends in terms of anything that you can use for impact. I think it's still going to be direct contact with people, so public engagement events, talks, online talks, or exhibitions, whatever, and then having an iPad or something like that and asking people, could they just share a little bit about what they thought, or Mentimeter or whatever. But I for me personally, it's difficult to weigh up all the amount of time you might be on social media for what I feel you might get out of it. Saying that, the book that I co-edited on School Uniform, one of the co-editors I came across via Twitter. So, so I have had benefits from it, but it's an individual decision, and I made the decision to free up time for other things.
Wow.
Can I just make, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to make a comment because I don't use social media. I have a LinkedIn profile, but I don't use social media. But I was just thinking as everyone was talking, when we do qualitative data, I know that qualitative data gathering is not valued as much as quantitative. I think, however, that actually doing interviews with participants even that act of doing the interview can be impactful because you're facilitating some kind of reflective habits, right? So it's not just about, okay, the impact, I have to publish this many papers or get this funding or, right? But actually, yeah. So I think actually for Betul, you said about your project, I don't think that you even need to necessarily find these people again and do any kind of, I think that actually facilitating an interview situation is really impactful because it gets them to think more about what they're doing. Yeah.
I completely agree with you, Carla, and I believe the empowering role of qualitative data, empowering both for us as researchers and empowering for our participants, depending on the nature of our research, especially in the multicultural education field. Qualitative data is much more important than quantitative data because it is really difficult to collect some quantitative data because there's also a huge social desirability effect in quantitative data, the collection instruments. So I completely agree with you. However, policymakers usually consider quantitative data as a more reliable source because they love numbers. This is something compelling us or challenging us a little bit, I think, here, because personally, I completely agree with you, but in the practical world of politics and policy making, there might be a tendency to rely more on numbers rather than qualitative evidence, I think.
It's unfortunate.
So unfortunate. So unfortunate. It is unfortunate.
Well, it's a really fascinating conversation. So, yeah, I'll just draw things to a close. I've really enjoyed this session. If I do say so myself, I think the speaker's been fantastic, and it's been really informative. So I think we've seen that, change, it can be affecting one individual, it could be affecting a group of people, or it can be affecting an entire nation. So it's just really interesting to see how people's research is leading to change. And hopefully this is just the start of the conversation for people. It's been great to see in the chat that people have been interacting, sharing emails. I'm sure if any of the speakers are contacted, they'd be happy to carry on that conversation with people. But yeah, thank you all for joining us, and yeah, have a lovely evening wherever you are.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.